I definitely enjoyed him being the coach. We formed a bond with him being with me, all the time at softball. And it was hard as well, especially when getting to the softball and he's playing, I'm a senior, and that people are saying, oh, she's only playing because her dad's the coach. We were always looking forward to hanging out as a team. And obviously we had fun playing softball.
What do you think has changed the most from the time you played as like an 8-9-year-old girl to where it is right now?
The competitiveness, I think, has changed immensely over the years. Coming from middle school softball, you go into high school, it's a completely different environment.
Welcome in, everybody, to another edition, an interview edition of Fighting for Overtime. I'm your host, Coach Tony. And with me today, man, this is going to be such an exciting episode. When you coach over the years, especially when you pass, you don't expect to cross and you kind of jump ship through different townships. This is kind of what happened to me with this beast right here of a pitcher. Again, this is Mackenzie Marino. Before she was a kick-ass real estate agent, Mackenzie Marino was a beast on the softball field. I tell you, she was a pitcher on the mound. Her career spans 9+ years playing for Northampton Hawks at Council Rock South High School. And you wouldn't know by looking at her, I'm going to be honest with you, but her demeanor on the mound struck fear into the opposition and now has carried her into a very successful career in real estate. Make sure you're following. She's a real estate agent licensed in both PA and New Jersey for Roc Hous Real Estate. You can follow her at Mackenzie Marino, Mackenzie Marino .realtor on IG. Mackenzie, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
No, I tell the story all the time. Obviously, who knew our paths would have crossed? And I coached in Southampton. Mackenzie played in Northampton. I didn't like her dad. Here he liked me. I didn't think he liked me. And all of a sudden we joined forces and we started to coach. And I was like, there's no way this girl is the main pitcher on his team. She looks like she couldn't hurt anybody. And man, was I wrong. You were a beast, man. I'll never forget it.
Thank you.
You had that demeanor. It was great. And listen, I mean, you see it. You're very successful right now. You're kicking ass in the real estate world. And we talked about it. Very stressful, very hard, right? But what do you think, would you say, do you think kind of like your time in high school pitching and Northampton kind of molded you for this battle as being a real estate agent?
I would say it definitely did, because I feel like when I first started real estate, obviously I'm going into the business, I know nothing. So I didn't have any family that was in real estate that I could kind of like lean on. I went in and I knew nobody and I knew nothing. And I would always talk to my dad and I would be like, this is a lot. Like, this is stressful. And he was like, you started playing softball, you knew nothing, you didn't know anybody, and you practiced and you learned the sport. And he's like, it's the same thing. You have to learn the business. And I always would reflect back on that and be like, you're right. And it took time. I didn't sell a house in my first 6 months. And I had to meet people. I had to learn the business. You have to learn what you're selling. You can't sell somebody a house when I don't even know the business myself.
That's a great point. And I say that in the radio business all the time. I'll shop around and people will want to sponsor my shows. And the first thing I say is, how do I sponsor something and talk about something I know nothing about? It makes you look kind of like fake.
And a lot of salespeople, are looked at as fake. And that was one thing that I tried to avoid. I would rather form a connection with somebody in the long run than try and sell them a house right off the bat. And I think I did a pretty decent job at forming connections with a majority of my clients. And I have went on to sell some clients 3 to 4 more houses because we built a relationship. And that's a huge part of it.
And then you get that word of mouth, right? You get that referral. It's like, hey, listen, I have this awesome agent over. She won't do you dirty. She won't do you wrong. It's so great to hear that. And again, make sure you're following Fighting for Overtime. You can find it on TikTok, you can find it on Instagram, you can find it on YouTube, anywhere you get your podcast. But Ken's talked about starting this up because listen, you talked about how everything's molded you into where you are today. I feel like I'm honored that you're joining me here. I talk about everybody I coach as being my kids forever. It's great to watch you grow up. And looking at your whole journey throughout youth sports, what do you think has changed the most from the time you played as like an 8-9-year-old girl to where it is right now, what you kind of went through in your time too?
The competitiveness, I think, has changed immensely over the years. Coming from middle school softball, you go into high school, it's a completely different environment because you have more girls that are competing for JV and varsity spots, and the parents are competitive. They're rooting for their child to be starting shortstop, and they get mad when they're not. And it affects the child because, the parents often blame it on the coach, and then the child hears that, and then they start to dislike the coach, and then it goes downhill. But the competitiveness has changed, and I have friends that were 2 years younger than me that played softball, and to watch them playing, even after I was done and graduated, it was completely different.
You just said is it strikes a chord, because we've talked about it on the show too. It's what you hear at home, right? It's that ride home. It's like, why didn't you play anymore? Well, that's because the coach doesn't know what he's doing. He has no idea. And that puts like a strenuous stress on you, the child, right?
Absolutely.
It's so tough. It really is. And it's kind of like how this has changed. Now, your dad was your coach for many years. Mm-hmm. And we hear the word, I talked about having an episode called Daddy Ball. And I was a coach for my kids, and I would hear a lot like, oh, he's just taking care of his own kid. He's just taking care of his own kid. Now, I know your dad. He wasn't like that. But did you ever go through those circumstances? Did you ever hear whispers of people talking like that when that happened? Yeah,
so he started coaching. He started his own travel team when I was about 12. So I didn't really have, obviously, problems at 12U. But as you grow up, it starts to get worse. But I was grateful that on our travel team, majority of the girls and the parents were super close with my dad. We kind of built like a family. So I would say I didn't really face too many problems with travel and my teammates. Most of the problems I faced were between my dad and I. Car rides home in dead silence for like 3 hours from Maryland. I'm like calling my mom. I'm like, oh my God, dad's pissed. I dropped the ball. Like, that was rough. It was more between my dad and I. He actually ended up coaching high school ball when I was a senior. And that was when it kind of was a little different, because I don't know some of the girls, you know what I mean? I don't have a relationship with them. I'm not friends with them like that. And, my dad coming in, and then I'm worried, like, are these girls going to like my dad? Are they going to hate my dad? Are they going to talk about my dad? Like, it was a different environment. I was very lucky that everyone got along. It was good, but, I can see how it is hard.
You make a good point, because it's not only from the playing aspect, it's from the family aspect of, you have girls over there, if they were, and they're chirping about your dad, and they're not like looking at him as a person, as a coach, but it's hard. It's your dad. It's, how do I not care? How do I not get involved? And be like, yo, you don't even know what you're talking about, right? It's a great point, because I remember when I came over, that team was like a family, and I felt that way. I was like, how am I even going to fit in? And hopefully Kenzie doesn't tell any of the crazy stories about my ass, but I wasn't the most calm person, so to speak. Frank used to have to calm me down. When you play for coaches and you have parents that get along, it makes the environment that much more special, and it allows you to be more free and not have that pressure, right? And even play better.
I mean, I still had pressure. I would look down at my dad on third base, and he'd be like rolling his eyes, and I'm like, oh my God. But, it was definitely more relaxing. I definitely enjoyed him being the coach. It was awesome. We were obviously very close, but we formed like a bond with him being with me, all the time at softball. And obviously he taught me so much, but it was hard as well, especially when getting to the softball and he's playing, I'm a senior, and that people are saying, oh, she's only playing because her dad's the coach. And you heard it a lot. I actually sat the majority of probably the beginning 5-6 games when he was a senior. I sat the bench. I didn't play. I didn't bat, and nothing. And the athletic director noticed, and he was like, I know you're sitting her, because you're new to this, you're just starting. And he's like, that's not fair to her. Like, I obviously deserved at least some playing time. So I did start to play, but it was hard because I wanted to play and he wanted to play me, but you don't want to hear the backlash from the parents. So you kind of take a step back, and I was the one that had to be sat.
I say that all the time. The coach's kid is always the one who takes the brunt of everything, because you're so worried about, Taylor would always be the one I would sit, or Chris or H. I always be like, nah, man, you got to sit. I'm going to hear it if you don't. And it's a shame, but it's true. And it does happen. Again, we're listening right here, Fighting for Overtime. This is Mackenzie Marino. Give her a follow at MackenzieMarino.realtor on IG. I'll make sure her information is in the description. She's a real estate agent in PA and New Jersey for Roc Hous Real Estate. Make sure you're getting her email, Mackenzie@rockhouse.com. And listen, she's been a pitcher, and now she's a kick-ass real estate agent, and she's giving us her experiences. And let me ask you this, because what's it like? Because I hear a lot. One of the biggest arguments I got with soccer was the kids should not play club soccer while they're playing school soccer. And I don't know how it was when you were pitching in high school and playing for the travel team. Did that argument come into play back then too?
No. So I actually didn't pitch too much in high school. There was a girl who was better than me, and I accepted that. Like, she went on to play D1 softball. She was better than me. And at that point I had to be a teammate. You know what I mean? I couldn't just focus on myself that I wasn't pitching. You know, I still played in the field. So I didn't really have that. Obviously, I still played travel and I was pitching at majority of my travel games, but I wasn't really pitching in high school. But I think it's super important for children to play both. I think they just get more experience. And obviously it's a lot. It can be overwhelming and draining and obviously all that, but it's played right. It's fun.
And that's what I've always said. It's got to be played right. One of the most important things. I don't think that happens a lot. I don't think it is played right. I think that's one of the most important things.
We didn't play too much. If we had a very happy medium, I still had a huge social life. I still went to events at school. I still did all of that. But you hear now, with travel teams, they're traveling to Colorado and Texas and New England, and, they're losing a lot of their social life. And by the time you go to play in college, you're drained. You're done. You want nothing to do with the sport anymore. And at that point, you're playing because your tuition's covered and your parents want you to play, and it makes it difficult and it affects the child.
It does. It's a great point. And the burnout is what I've been talking about. The statistics right now for kids in their junior year that decide just not to play anymore are staggering because they are burnout. Just for instance, when you were pitching, you have a pitching coach?
Yes.
So during the week, how many sessions do you think you would pitch?
I would have 2 pitching lessons a week. I also had hitting lessons. And then obviously high school, you're practicing 5 days a week. And you would maybe have a travel practice in once a week if you could squeeze time in. But you're playing tournaments on the weekends and you're almost playing softball 7 days a week.
Did you have any problems managing that when you were that age, trying to just be a kid as well as trying to make sure you get all your work in?
Yeah, that was the hard part, obviously with school and everything. And there are some times where, my friends were all hanging out and I was at pitching lessons for 2 hours, dying in the heat and, in the summer. And it's hard. But like I said, back to travel, I had a happy medium where I definitely got enough of a social life. I got to live down the shore in the summer while still coming home for tournaments and practices. But you don't see that a lot or at all. I was grateful that that was able to happen for me, but a lot of my friends on travel teams, that was not the case. Their summer was taken over with traveling.
Good point. And it's like those tiers of travel teams. And I just came out with an episode the other day and talk about, are you willing to give up your holidays for your sports? And I never was. Again, when we were in Northampton, we didn't play every weekend. Your dad would select specific tournaments that we would go to, which was great. But you're right. You'd see these upper echelon elite travel teams that every weekend they're going to Brazil, they're going to Georgia. It's like, when do you even have time to breathe? I mean, it's so tough. I'm so glad you made that point because I try to explain that you have to be a kid too. And in a way, I feel like you can treat that travel team as a social environment as well, because like you said, you're with your friends. And even when you go to the tournament, it's like, okay, you go to Ocean City, Maryland, but play the game and then you get the whole night that you get to hang out with your friends, right?
Absolutely. And we were super close as a team. So, going there was like you were hanging out with your best friends. You were walking on the boardwalk at night, going to the beach, you know what I mean? You're still with your group of friends, but over time it can be draining and exhausting.
I'll tell you, man, it is really, really tough. Now, the other topic that you never faced, but I'm curious of your opinion on, is team jumping. And it's, do you feel an athlete should move from team to team during your sports journey? You see that kid that every year they go to a different team because they want a better opportunity or they just want to win. And did that ever cross your mind to go somewhere else? Or where you're like, look, I'm just happy. I'm here. I'm having fun. I'm playing competitively. It's not always about that. I just want to be in a good environment.
Yeah, obviously I never experienced that, but I don't think that they should. I think that majority of the time it's the parents saying, you're not starting at second base. Let's go to this team. Maybe you can start there. And then you hear that they've switched teams 5 times in a year. And at that point, it's ridiculous. You're not forming a connection with your teammates. You're not forming a connection with your coaches. And you can't just pick up and leave when you're not happy because, once you get to high school ball, you're not just picking up and leaving schools. You're stuck where you are and you're competing for that spot. It's different.
I feel the same way. I used to hate when kids jump back and forth because it's not even forming that bond. You're not forming that relationship. This is going to be my last year coaching. And these kids I've coached since they've been 8 years old. It's I have so many memories, 9 years of these kids growing up. I wouldn't have that if they jump teams and team and after team. So looking back on softball, whether it be through childhood days or high school days, what do you remember most? What is your favorite, I would say moment, but just your favorite kind of story about softball, about why you continue to play?
I honestly think the team was probably my favorite. We were all so close and we had fun. We had fun at practice. We had fun at the tournaments. We had fun traveling. We were always looking forward to when we could go to our next tournament, when we could go stay in a hotel that had an indoor pool. We were always looking for something next? I was always, Dad, let's go look at hotels. Where are we staying? And he's like, it's 2 months out. And I'm like, I don't care. We were always looking forward to hanging out as a team. And obviously we had fun playing softball. You know, we had 3 games on a Saturday, but Saturday night we were all hanging out together. But you don't see that often, I think, with travel teams. They're kind of all scattered, I guess. Some teammates are close, some aren't, but we were very grateful that we were all like one big family.
It's because everybody's picking and prodding from different groups and they want the better players here. And it's great because that's kind of how I had my travel team in soccer. Kids were from all different neighborhoods, but what was great was they would form a bond and they would still hang out there because they start to drive and they would meet each other up. And I'm like, this is pretty cool. And you don't always get that. It really helps continue along. Again, this is Fighting for Overtime. Make sure you're following. This is Mackenzie Marino. You can follow her at MackenzieMarino.realtor on IG. She's a real estate agent in PA and New Jersey for Roc Hous Real Estate. Her email is Mackenzie@rochouse.com. She was one of the girls that I was lucky enough to be able to coach. She had a fantastic softball career throughout Northampton Township and Council Rock High School. And now she's a kick-ass real estate agent. Let's talk about that before I get you out of here, man. Moving on to this real estate career. When did you know this is what you wanted to do?
I was always into houses. I was always into real estate, but it never really crossed my mind that this was like something I wanted to do. I went off to Bucks County Community College for 2 years, and I was like, all right, I think I want to be a teacher. So I started studying early education. I actually have my associates in early education, and it was like April, and I was going to transfer to Penn State Abington in the fall to finish it out. And I was talking to my parents, and I was like, I don't think that this is what I want to do. I was like, I think I want to do real estate. And they were like, what? And I was like, I think I want to do real estate. Like, and they were like, why don't you just finish out? You got 2 more years left, like get your bachelor's in early education and you have that to fall back on if real estate doesn't work. And I was like, there's no reason to go and spend the money when this is not what I want to do. I was like, I want to do real estate full time. So I started classes the next month and I had my license by like October. Then I joined a brokerage and I've been doing it full time for almost 3 years.
You know what's great about that story that I tell people all the time? You weren't sure. You go to Bucks and it's a great environment. I am a firm believer that AJ now is 17. He's going to be a senior next year. And I said, look, man, I'm not the guy who says you have to go to college. My thing is you need to do something, whether it's trade school, whether it's real estate, like you need to do something to get yourself out there. So I applaud for what you did. And it's great that you said, why am I going to waste the money? Okay, it's a piece of paper, but at the end of the day, it's not what I want to do. And when did you said, what, 6 months before you sold your first house?
6 to 8 months.
So how much did that mentally grind you?
It was hard. It was hard because you're walking into an environment, and the brokerage that I started at, they were all older than me. I was one of the youngest ones. And it's hard to, get the mentorship and get the training and learn the business. And it's hard to find clients, obviously. No one's going to trust you when you just started out. So that's kind of when you have to rely on like family and your friends. And that's kind of what I did. That was the first house that I sold, was to my family. That's
awesome. And that's so true. Now, that grind, that's the same kind of grind that you had when you were pitching or when you were playing. That's kind of how it molded you to be able to say, all right, well, I've been through this before. You're an adult now, right? It's weird. Adulting's weird, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. It's a different environment for sure.
It's not like I can just go hang out with my girls on a weekend and forget about it, right? So It's like, this is my career.
It was always in the back of my mind, like, it's been 2 months and I haven't sold a house. It's been 3 months and I haven't sold a house. It's been 6 months. It was always, is this really going to work out for me? Like, is this really, should I have just finished out my 2 years at school? Am I wasting my time? You know what I mean? But then I would think like, no, like I can always fall back. I can always go to school. I can always get my degree. This is something I want to do. And I feel like starting out at my age was huge because obviously, I've sold a decent amount over the last 3 years, but I've gained so much connections with people and formed so many relationships in such a short period of time. So I think starting out young I don't regret it at all.
I say this to people all the time. If you treat people like people and not like dollar figures, you'd be surprised how much they respect you. And obviously that's what you're doing. And that's why you get those connections. And I say to start this podcast to show the good and the bad side of youth sports. And I feel like you going through that grind, the one thing it did teach you was to continue to fight, to continue to work. And that's what you're doing right now. So if you had to speak to whether it be a young athlete right now, just starting out, or you said 12 years old, right? Your dad started the child, to say 14 years old right now, and they're going through it. And they're like, is this really what I want to do? Or they're having issues. What would you say to them that have them keep going based on your experiences?
Basically to have fun. The biggest part of playing is to have fun. Have fun with your teams, have fun at practice, make every single moment count. I would pay so much money if I could go back and play softball right now. I would love to play again, but it goes by so fast. And before you know it, you're done high school ball, you're done. You're not playing in college, and that's it. And then you look back and you kind of rush through the years. You rush through the practices in the heat, and you rush through the tournaments on the weekends when you didn't get to hang out with your friends. And now you look back and you're 19 years old and you're like, I would love to play sports again.
Listen up, kids. It goes by fast, people. It goes by fast. Well, listen, Kenz, I have to say, man, this has been fantastic. Before I let you go, do you have any houses on the market right now or open houses coming up?
I have a listing in Cape May, and I have a house that I just sold in Fairless Hills.
Cape May, down the shore. That's got to be fun. I got an open house at Cape May. Get to go down the shore, right?
Yeah, pretty close to the beach. Do the open house for 2 hours, go to the beach.
That's a nice tour right there. That's she's living. She's living. I love it. I love it. Again, it's Mackenzie Marino. Make sure you give her a follow at MackenzieMarino.realtor on IG. Again, real estate agent in PA and New Jersey for Roc Hous Real Estate. She's there for all your needs. I'm vouching for her. Other people are vouching for her, and she's been willing to share her fight in overtime when it comes to softball. Kenz, thanks again so much. And listen, who knows, man? Maybe I'll get you back on a little bit. We'll talk a little more and see how everything's going.
Yeah, we should start a team together.
Hey, listen, I'm all for it. I'm all about a team. Let's go. I'm ready. I'm done this year, and then I said I want to start a softball team from the time the kids are young and go all the way up. So
yeah,
we'll have to get that going. That sounds like a plan.
I agree. We'll make my dad keep the book. We'll do the coaching.
He's going to have to be there because somebody's have to calm me down.
Hey, you're right. You're right.
Appreciate it. Listen, you have a great day. Everybody have a great day. Make sure you're following Fighting for Overtime on all social formats. We'll get you next time. Remember, keep fighting for the right reasons, and we'll get you back here next time. Fighting for Overtime is a Rise and React media production. If you're looking to start a podcast, if you're looking to get some direction, hit us up. Let us know. We'll help you out there as well. Again, for everybody, enjoy your time, memories and moments, and keep fighting that fight. Continue to fight in overtime to make your kid have the best experience that they can have when it comes to playing youth sports.